you live in San Antonio,
Yeah.
the Canyon Lake, outside the Sound City a little bit. There was legitimately a guy back in, I think it was like late 80s, who built a house out of hay bales. Like, so whatever you think somebody wouldn't do, he'll do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Nice. I did not hear that story. I'm curious where that is. I'm very familiar with a lot of the land that got developed up there, and mobile home parks and that sort of thing.
If you're a real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show is for you. Learn secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field who will guide you on your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so you can take your commissions and turn them into cash flow. Here's your host, Randal. Let's dive in.
Hey, welcome back. Today's guest is Kelly Meyer. He's a land specialist here in the Texas market in New Braunfels and just outside of San Antonio, where I am. So it's great to talk to somebody that was local to me, get to know somebody that is right down the road and I haven't actually met. Guys doing a bunch of land deals. So they're buying large tracts, subdividing and selling those things off. And we talk about the owner finance strategy that he's employing himself and the developer that he's been working with has been using. So if you're looking for owner financing land or that type of strategy of subdividing land, this is a great episode for you. We also talked about the business that he started and then sold, exit, made a lot of money, transitioned into a brewery business, and he has a podcast that is how not to start a brewery. So you know how that story goes based on the title of that. But it's a super interesting conversation to me because it's a business owner that had an exit. That is a great story just in itself. And then also having another business that didn't go as planned, and just some of the trials that he went through to exit that, the learning that he had from that, and just kind of how he worked on getting out of it and the writing that he has done. So great conversation. Kelly's a great guy. If you're looking for land in the Texas market, I know that they are selling some. His contact information is going to be in the show notes. So if you want to reach out to him directly, please feel free to do that. And let's jump in and have the conversation. Hey, Kelly, awesome to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me today. We were just talking just now about the brewery business that you started. So I want to just touch on the history. You know, like you started a brewery. What was the impetus for you starting the brewery? And then kind of tell me how you got into real estate from there.
well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah.
I would say that the more people you talk to that own breweries, you're going to hear a similar version of the story that I had a first career, seven-figure exit. I'm invincible. Like, hey, let's do something fun. Let's go open a brewery. And so in 2011, I thought that would be a great active retirement. And it turned out to be a fantastic way to set some money on fire. But 9.5 years I spent doing that.
So you were just, was it more like a passion project and that's why you stay with it for 9 years? Or you're like just pure brute force, I'm going to make this work type thing? What was the,
Yeah, you sound like a much more even keel, level-headed guy than I am. And that was my first sort of big failure, and I did everything I could to not make it one.
yeah.
Not just for the cocky side of like my thing. I mean, obviously my family's income, I had two kids, like I wanted this thing to work. So I stayed in it longer than I should have for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. I definitely know that side of the ego equation. You're like, I'm going to make this work type of thing. So, okay. So then you worked on that for a while. I know you have the podcast, How Not to Start a Brewery. So if you're interested in not starting a brewery, go over, check that out. I know you have good conversations with people all over working on breweries. So how did you transition into real estate and why land specifically?
To be honest, I got lucky, and yeah, I kind of run the risk of offending somebody. I don't mean to do that, but I never had respect for real estate agents in general throughout my, even the guys that have sold my house. I'm just being like, these guys can't sell, they don't close. Like, I would never do this as a job. And what ended up happening is that when the brewery was really facing extinction, it was like 2019. My wife was like, I got to get a job. So she got a job for a developer, and he's all over the state buying large ranches, subdividing them. And she was like, honestly, man, from a sales perspective, there's a ton of opportunity here. This is different. It's not selling houses. The lady's not going to walk in and be pissed if the tile's blue instead of off green or whatever. And so kind of did some research on it, looked at it. I'm like, this is actually a fun thing. I drive around on dirt and then I answer questions all day. It's basically my job.
Yeah.
So when I finally sold the brewery, which was September 5th, 2021, not that I remember, I got my license and started doing land simply because it was sort of an opportunity that was there, and ended up just I truly enjoy the job and the day to day of what I do. So it was a good choice.
Yeah, and so you're structured as you're licensed, but you also invest and you do it yourself. Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah, okay. So let's talk both tracks there. Again, on the land side, you work for a developer. Is the developer simply doing the large tracts, cut it up, smaller tracts, sell it off, or are they actually putting neighborhoods in, doing some sort of infrastructure play? Like what are they doing, or all the above?
Yeah, generally as little infrastructure as possible. From a investment perspective, it takes longer to add streets. You can make more per acre, obviously, but the simplicity side of it is you can chop and sell, and if you have a sales team of professionals, then it works out well for them. So there are times that we do some infrastructure as far as electrical and water, but that's about it.
Yeah. Okay. And so the play, like what are you guys typically focusing on? What size tracks on the larger plays? Are you going 2,000 acres? Is it 40 acres
From
or what?
from what we purchase, usually less than 1,000,
Less than
unless we
okay.
do it. Unless we do it in stages, yeah, because our wheelhouse is really we excel at the 10-acre mark, and so on the consumer side, we want to be able to market anything from like the smallest that does well for us is 3, maybe 4, up to maybe 10, and so you do too many tracks and you'll never sell it outright.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So when you go to sell, if you are buying that 1,000 acres, are you cutting those to like 100-acre tracts, doing mini ranches, or are you guys doing you trying to get a road in there and actually putting in 10-acre tracts, so 110-acre tracts
No, so generally the roads end up being a whole mess of things, and so the less, like I said, the less infrastructure we can put in, the better.
for sure?
If with 1,000 acres, we've gotten lucky where there's ways to structure it subdivision wise where you don't have to do that. So a little thinner tracks, obviously deeper, and then even some flag tracks here and there, depending on if the counties let us.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's walk through. I know you do some owner finance things and you guys offer that. I love that strategy. We're doing it on the single family side, like we talked about. I like it for land as well because you don't have anything on it. If you have to take it back, it's a lot of easier process. So let's, I guess, talk about the deal flow and how it actually works. You guys are going out, you're buying this property, you're going to subdivide it. What for somebody who hasn't done it? Walk us through the
Mhm.
process of the acquisition, subdividing, and getting it to where it's able to be sold.
Yeah, so from the acquisition side, we're trying to find things that make sense in our wheelhouse as far as the numbers. So if it's like you have a spreadsheet obviously for a lot of things that you do, we kind of have the same model. So we're going to have a limit of what we can pay. We acquire it with the idea of subdividing it, kind of have an idea at that point, sometimes do an option, sometimes not, but have an idea at that point what we're going to do with it, bringing it down. And then it's just sort of drawing that plat, working with the county to make sure we can get it subdivided, picking numbers that work for us and that the market's going to support. Doesn't help to have a bunch of 50-acre tracts if no one's buying anything over 12 in that area. So,
Yeah.
just kind of understanding the market, which is challenging when you try to do it all over Texas, but it can work. So once it's been platted to the county, we at that point can start selling them. And with the larger tracks, even sometimes before that, depending on how the the subdivision's working and what we're planning on doing. Larger is easier, smaller is tougher,
Yep.
but
Are you do you guys have in-house like engineer surveying or is
mhm.
it yeah,
And
sorry, go ahead.
really, I mean, at the end of the day, anything you can manage is going to be easier we definitely have used outside guys, and sometimes, if the counties are working with somebody they prefer there in that area, that's one thing. But in general, we do most of it in-house when we can.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's faster, cheaper, we can control it, all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
make changes. I mean, a lot of times you're gonna have to change it.
Yeah. No, you just the way you said it, I was like, oh, you're drawing lines yourself. Not having no, okay.
Not
So
me.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know, I got a crown out and I was just, it's like, uh, so okay. So again, just going through the process, if somebody's looking to do this, you acquire the land or you're in the due diligence phase, maybe give yourself a long option period here, and then you are working with the county, typically outside of city limits. I would imagine you're doing all this stuff in and So it's straight to county commissioners most of the time for approval.
Mhm.
As long as you're staying over 10 acres in Texas, then, or depends on the county, I guess, but then you typically don't have to go through, what is it, like a full replat, right? It's just a, what is
Yeah,
the 10 acre, what's the 10 acre rule?
that's the point. So when it's 10.01 in general, we don't have to go through the plat. So the
Yeah,
plat's got to get approved and takes a lot more to get that done.
that's right.
We just had one that we released technically today. So we kind of had it on the market, or it was yesterday. We had it on the market. We're ready for it, but because of the plat, it took forever, and so we finally got it available to close starting today,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah, nice. So are you, this is interesting. Are you able to, do you have it set up in your contracts where you're able to market those properties prior to you closing on it? So you're
You
like,
can, yeah, it's just gonna be a special provisions thing. You can do it. I don't love it. And depending where you are in that plat process and how much you know about the individual commissioner you're working with, it
yeah,
may or may not be a good idea. But there's a guy that kind of saw we were doing it in one area and he decided to copy. And we were doing 10-acre tracts and he just decided, just a local agent that had bought some acreage from us, and he decided he was going to subdivide his 30 acres down to 2 acres. And that was, I don't think it was a year ago, but it was a long time ago and it is still not done.
oh my
So
God, yeah,
but
yeah,
he sold 4 or 5 of them on MLS, and so he has those contracts just sitting out there with earnest money, I guess. And
yeah.
I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you can.
Someday you'll get your land, I promise. Someday.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, all right. So you go through that process and then, again, you're going out. You're not, are you fencing? You're not doing any of that type of infrastructure either. You guys put
It
any deed
depends on the,
restrictions on it?
yeah, I think deed restrictions are mandatory. And I've had people ask me all the time about looking for unrestricted land. And I do definitely come across it, especially with other developers that do it. And quite frankly, I tell people I don't work with unrestricted land because some neighbor always screws it up. There's a legitimate reason why those deed restrictions are there. They should be light, in my opinion. You should be able to do pretty much what you want. But unfortunately, single wide mobile homes drive down the value of everybody. A 400 square foot house, same thing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to live next to 1,000 head of cattle on 20 acres.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to have deed restrictions, I think, to have any valuation to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you don't need 20,000 cars on a lot either. Just like some turns into a junkyard type thing. Yeah.
I'll say you live in San Antonio,
Yeah.
the Canyon Lake, not outside the City a little bit. There was legitimately a guy back in, I think it was like late 80s, who built a house out of hay bales. Like, so whatever you think somebody wouldn't do, he'll do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Nice. I did not hear that story. I'm curious where that is. I'm very familiar with a lot of the land that got developed up there in mobile home parks and that sort of thing. Some of it, it's interesting because now there's a lot of short-term rentals that there's not even really like good water access up there, and it's going down. But yeah, are you doing
eh.
land? I have a question on here. I'm like, what markets are you in? But let's get into that in a second. I want to go back and just finish the, I guess, nuts and bolts of it. So when you guys, once you subdivide it, you've got this parcel, and you and the sales team are going out, and you guys are actually the ones that are selling this for either the developer or your own personal items that you've acquired, correct? Okay.
Right.
So you sell these, and one of the exits is owner finance. Are you guys seeing a lot of cash transactions happening on dirt?
It changes. So, and keep in mind, I've only been licensed as an agent since October 2021, right? But to like give you an example, 2022, I came out and I did, I think it was 13 million in sales my first year. And I made the same amount that year as I did on 11 million last year because there were so many less MLS transactions, and most of those were direct consumer sales that we made. So the market's changed dramatically where there's a lot of people searching on Facebook for owner finance properties and less of those cash sales that we were getting through agents in the previous year. But I'm sure that comes back once real estate or once interest rates drop. I imagine we're going to get a major change to that. We kind of expect that to go back the other way, but you work with the market. So right
Yeah.
now is currently mostly owner financed individual people, which from the agent perspective is better because I get 6% if I bring the buyer. So
Yeah.
it's obviously better.
Yeah, yeah. So then when they're putting that money down, again, this is like super nuts and bolts, man. I like
Yeah.
digging into the weeds, seeing how other people's operations work. So you guys have 6%, and that's obviously coming out of a down payment that they're putting
Mhm.
down. And so how do you structure that? If you got a tract that's going for $150,000, 6% of that is coming out. How much is like the minimum you guys are taking, and what are you seeing people putting down? Like, how much cash are they actually putting into these deals? Is it just the minimum closing costs, or do you guys make them come up with more?
Yeah, in general, we want between 10 and 20%.
Okay.
And you can do it. I know the developer I work for has been doing it for 30 years, and he's like, dude, there were times when I took down $500, but because I wouldn't do it anymore. But I mean,
Yeah.
you can, right? It's just going to be a little more out of pocket and a little bit of risk. But I imagine you deal with this with the houses that you work with too. You rarely are going to get a foreclosure that you're going to wind up selling for less.
Yeah.
So the asset stays strong as long as you can maintain a little, you don't lose much on the front end, then you ultimately will make money. It just may take longer to make it. So
Yeah. 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 No, we just took one back. We took a single family back, and I showed up, and there was like partially burned. And I'm like, man, the neighbor's house next door caught on fire, caught our carport on fire, and burned like the electric meter. So now we have to rewire the whole house. We have to do new AC because the people like took it. Water here's gone. Any of that. Regardless, all of those things, all of the problems. I mean, we're still way in the money, and we're about $100,000 in equity after we do the rehab and full blown blowout for this thing. So yeah, I mean that's another reason why I love doing the owner finance side of things. And that's very rare that you get a property back that poorly maintained.
yeah, that's been
So
burned.
yeah,
That's
man, dude, I've got some stories. It's this one is, again, they were good, but I think they just got into a position where once it caught on fire, and they just, I think they had a divorce. All these things happened at the same time, so they moved out. Anyway, not about me. So
yeah.
so all right, so the dirt. So you're getting 10 to 20% down. What are you guys seeing on terms? What are you guys typically offering right now in this environment? I know, like, you go to the bank for dirt loan, it's got to be a fairly high rate.
Yeah, nine and
Single
a half
families.
was one of the last ones I did through a bank. We typically charge 12.
Okay.
And we've done some stuff lower where, if you got to, it's like any bank, you do a buy down or a temporary, buy in for less. But
Hmm.
12 has been our wheelhouse. And as much as that has been an objection from time to time with some people, the other side of it is it's owner financing. Everyone's qualified, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it hasn't been much of an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I wouldn't think that would be an issue right now. So 12%. And then are you guys doing a full 30? Is that a 10-year, 20-year AM?
Yeah, we do 30 and then just don't do a prepayment penalty. So it allows people to kind of, do what they want to do as far as the length and the term. That obviously based on the investor isn't always advantageous because we do have a lot of refis at the, couple year mark or whatever, like you would expect. But
Yeah.
yeah, in general, we just kind of let people run with it and it works out well. We
Yeah.
don't have a lot of people backing out of it or anything like that or foreclosing on. So
Yeah. 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 Awesome. Okay. So that's on that side of it. And what are you trying to, like, personally on your investment side of things? What are you trying to either build to? Do you guys are you trying specifically to go out and create more notes, or are you like, I still just want to turn and burn and get these things done, mix of the two? Like, what is it looking like for you?
I think it's always going to be a mix. So me personally, I'm at the stage that I'm trying to build as many notes as I can.
Yeah.
So just well, because I have income on one side, my portfolio of land financing is intended to be sort of my bridge retirement, and so which might be a little personal if you don't know, but like because of the company I sold in the beginning, my actual retirement is funded. I don't have to worry about that. But what I do have to worry about is I want to retire at like 50. And so I need income there. So these properties, that's the whole design is I'm trying to create enough revenue monthly to be able to not retire, but you know what I mean? Not have to
Yeah.
work. Just do podcasts all day like you
Yeah,
do.
man. Sit around and record, not get in the car and drive. Where did you say you went? You went to Tyler? Where did you drive up to?
Taylor. So
Taylor.
I went to Taylor back to New Braunfels and I'm going to Lockhart here in a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. All right, well then let's touch on that, because I'm curious, like, what markets are you guys seeing that this is like popping in? Because that whole 123 corridor up, like 131, like that whole area. I mean, that's kind of where you're driving to. Lockhart area,
Mhm.
like, hits that. So, like, what are you finding is in Texas some of the best markets that you guys are in? Give me the secret sauce, man, so I can copy it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, so in general, in my opinion, there's a couple ways to do it. And what I've seen, I mean, at the end of the day, you can almost make it work anyway, quote unquote, in the sense that if you've got a county you can work with, then and they're interested in having subdivision, and even sometimes when they're not, but then you're fine. Because in general, if you buy 100 acres at a fixed per acre price, you're going to sell 10 acres of that for 3 to 4 times as much. Worst case, two, depending where it is. So then the game becomes, how can I leverage that to get that same acreage for even less? And did I find a deal? Is there, a rancher who died and his cousin somehow inherited the property inappropriately and he doesn't care, he just wants to move it, whatever, right?
yeah,
But the areas that tend to have the best kind of like sales figures are the ones that I think we do best in. And then it's also, outside the city, like you said, less regulations. But I think that for me, what I see is it's the market outside the market. So, use like Central Texas as an example. I wouldn't want to be in Austin, but and I wouldn't want to be in Buda, but I'd want to be in Lockhart because that's the third market out. I think you get better deals, and you can go further out than that. I just think your sales volume would be a little slower. It has been a little bit slower for us the further out we go.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
for sure.
kind of in the middle. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned it a couple times, but I want to know. So, what was your original company? What did you exit?
I
Or sell?
owned 8 fitness centers with my wife. So it was Anytime Fitness. We were
Yep.
like some of the first franchisees.
Awesome. All right. And that then just you got a wild hair one day and you bought this, or what was you bought into the franchise model, or what?
No, I started working for those guys. Let's see. I was 20 years old. I turned 21 and I went on the road. They had a sales and marketing company where we just went to every armpit in the United States that didn't know how to sell health club memberships. And we just came in and created a promotion to do that.
Hmm.
And so like Vernal, Utah, past Christian, Mississippi, like just places you don't even freaking heard of and
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to go. But anyways, they came across this business model at one point in Tennessee. And this guy was like, I have 150 members. I don't care if you sell anymore. And they were like, how are you making any money? And so he showed him how he did this whole 24-hour concept where people were coming and going, and they were like, huh, we're smarter than that guy. Let's create a franchise. And they invested heavily in this franchise, and now it's one of the largest fitness companies in the world. But we knew the guys in the beginning. So we were like the 30th franchisee.
Yeah.
We grew it into 8. And then, yeah, one day I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's kind of like that first corporate job, right? You make the sacrifices to make your money to get to like first base, and then you really start to take a look at what the rest of your life's going to look like. And you're like, this is not going to be part of the rest of my life. So we sold the company and went a different direction. And
Well,
unfortunately, that direction was not a good one. But
son of a. Yeah. All right. Look, I want to ask you then. This is a departure from real estate, but it's business because I was talking to a friend of mine who, during COVID, no, maybe it was after great financial crisis, real estate guy, been buying real estate, has tons of apartments, all kinds of stuff. But around that time, everything was slow in real estate. So he got
mhm.
into yogurt shops. Like he bought a few yogurt shops himself. He didn't like get into a franchise. He was telling me, and I'm like, I literally took my kids to one the day before, and I was like, this seems so simple. It's like this little business. There's one employee. It's so easy. Like this is no problem. Kind of relates to the Anytime Fitness where there's only like one or two people there. It's seemingly right. My outside looking in, but talking to him about it, he's like, no, it's a pain. You have multiple employees because you have to have shifts, right? And then they break the machine. They're just these kids who don't give a crap about anything, and so they don't clean them properly. Blah blah blah. All the headaches that come with owning a business, right? And he was like, I just didn't need the headache, didn't need the hassle, so I sold them all. He like 3x'd his money on all the little shops that he did, but he was like, I'm out. So I'm kind of curious, going back to your experience, like what was it if these things, again, outside looking in, I'm like, Anytime Fitness, how many employees do you really have? What's the headache that caused you to be like, I don't want to do this. I don't want this headache anymore. Or was it more the upside? Like I can exit, I can take my nut and run and do something else with it.
Yeah, so there's a few factors. One, we'd originally said we were going to go to 10 locations. And so from the day I opened the first one as a 27-year-old kid, I was arrogant enough to say I was going to do 10 locations in 10 cities. And there came a point at 8 that we just sort of, both my wife and I, we just ran out of steam.
Yeah.
But as far as the model, anytime, my opinion, anytime someone sells you something that says you don't have to work and you'll be a millionaire, you should run screaming with your hand on your wallet. Because yeah, the whole kind of like what he said, like, yeah, there's one manager and there's a few personal trainers, but to be able to keep people happy and to hit the revenue number that you need to be able to keep enough members, you have to have enough interactions, and those interactions have to be positive. And that guy's got to be in a good mood because if one guy's interacting with 75 people a day, he gets burned out.
Yeah.
Yeah, or she. And so, but at the end, when we had 8 locations, we had 29 employees total with managers and assistants and then, office staff. And that is part of what I said is that when I started the brewery, I will never have that many employees again for the rest of my life. That I love person. I cannot stand people. When you get people together as a group, it's overwhelming for me. And it's just not who I am. So
Yeah. All right. All right. Fair. Appreciate you sharing that because I think of that and I look at, you got the Hermosis of the world running around kind of doing what, yeah, I don't know if you know Alex Hermosi and like all, okay. So he's like, he used to sell gym everything, right? Now he has this new company and he's all over social media and promoting his stuff, but they're running around and there's another girl. She's like, just buy businesses, roll them up, do this whole model of having a whole co. Like that's a new thing that not new, but it's like the small Buffett version of, anybody can go
mhm.
do it. And so I'm always curious. That's the same reason I asked my buddy about it. I was like, what was your experience, like owning this little shop and it's not free of headaches and it's not. So like now with real estate, you get to go out, you get to see land, you get to, drive around Texas, you talk to clients one-on-one and you're building cash flow over time that you really don't have to see. And that's like, once you've done the note and you've created the note, you don't have to go back to that property or take many calls from those people, I would imagine. But,
No, I mean, in general, there's gonna be late payments and stuff like that, or your changes of ownership or whatever. But yeah, the note kind of carries itself, and like we talked about, at the end of the day, I do not want someone to, foreclose and lose their money or whatever. But from our perspective, I'm not going to lose money on that transaction, and probably will make money. Like
yeah,
I think one of the most dramatic ones I think was last year in Cedar Creek, like outside Bastrop. We had taken back a repo and we put it on the market, and the guy was like, add some money to it. I think they added quite a bit, and I sold it for 70,000 more than that within 3 days. So
yeah,
there's a lot of opportunity. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, that area too, again, that whole, I've been looking because I love the Seguin area. I like all around Seguin. And then that's why I was asking, like, what are you seeing? The prices in like the Floresville and let me ask you this again, inside baseball, like what is a decent price per acre that you guys are seeing in some of these markets that you're actually getting these things if they're off market before you guys come to, because you're saying 3 times. And a lot of the things that I see listed, like actually listed big tracts, I mean, they're minimum that I see in decent areas, 8, sometimes 12 per acre, price per acre.
yeah,
So you've got to be, sorry, go ahead.
you got to be around like 4 to 5 for sure.
Yeah.
And those are primarily off market. I've been pitched stuff too, doing what I do. People will send me things over and like, hey, this is a great investment opportunity. I'm like, immediately that means you've overpriced it. Like, and it'll be ridiculous. It'll be like we have a plat already done for the streets. Yeah, that's worth $15,000. Like, I'm not going to pay you
Yeah.
3 million more for that. It's just
Yeah.
stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you're sourcing most off market then is what you guys are doing.
Yeah. To
Yeah.
be
Okay.
successful, I think you have to. I mean, there's tighter margins. Obviously, you could do it with on-market property, but I have looked myself and I have never been able to find an on-market property that I thought fit the model.
Yeah. I mean, I have at numbers that they don't like. It's
Right.
just, yeah. It's like, oh, I like that for 4. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. We talked some about the business. I'm kind of curious again on the back end then. If somebody's going out, they're looking and they want to, set this up as maybe a strategy that they're going to use. I'm curious about the nuts and bolts that you use or how you're structuring it on the back end. I don't know how many notes you've created personally or how many you and the developer have, but how do you guys manage those? Is there some kind of either software or do you guys use a servicer or is that all in-house? Like, how do you guys manage that process?
Yeah, so we primarily, or he primarily does it in-house. And so he actually has a team that does it. Less people than you'd probably think. It's only a few for, hundreds of notes. But at the end of the day, I've worked with some of my friends to kind of set them up to do the same thing. And it really isn't that hard to open a check on once a month for certain people. So it depends on the amount of notes you're going to have. But the profit margin for me, I'm at that point where I need 10 personal notes to really hit what I want. And I have two, and then even that depends on the size, obviously. But with those two, I have them serviced through him, and he
Mhm.
does it for a fee. But at some point, I was like, it would not be a very hard job for the amount I'd get paid back to open 10 letters a month and then send receipts out. So
Yeah.
you don't have to use a Notesmith or one of the big softwares, but if you're going to do it as a big business, obviously you'd have no choice. You'd have to use the software.
Yeah. 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 I mean, on the service, it's also much different than single family. So we are doing consumer loans, right? I mean, there's mortgages to a
Hmm.
consumer are much more scrutinized than a note on land, which is essentially an investment because there's no, I mean, you're doing, yeah, commercial loan essentially is how you guys are structured. So it's a lot less regulation that you guys have to jump through in order to service those things. So, but I was just curious. I didn't know if you guys were using something.
We still do like disclosures and stuff too, just to kind of make sure we're on the up and up. So we have the two rounds of disclosures and then the final HUD closing statement. But yeah, I'm not sure we necessarily have to go through all of those hoops. I personally don't, because if you don't do more than five a year, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
He probably does, but
Yeah. Yeah. So you say you need 10. Like, what does that even look like? Are you saying you want to own the dirt free and clear, and then you're going to create a note on top of that? And so that's gets your numbers if you do 10 of those, or you,
yeah. So personally, for me, that puts me somewhere around 15 to $20,000 a month in revenue coming in. And being in business since I was a kid, have a worst case scenario outlook. So I expect 5 grand of that to not come in, which should be better than that. And then maybe some of those properties come off that I'm going to have to remarket and maybe even fix up. So for me to comfortably say I'm going to have 10 grand a month in income, I think I need 10 properties to do that. And so
yeah.
that's why it's my goal.
Yeah, yeah. And is that 10 total or 10 every year or
10 per month. Oh, you
oh,
mean just 10 properties. So if I have 10 properties on a 30-year note that are producing that level of income, then that gives me some flexibility to do some other things within there. If I want to add one, subtract one, if one cashes out and I need to go buy a new one. But if I have 10 active properties actively producing a monthly revenue,
mhm.
that's what I mean. So just maintaining 10 at all times.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
So
having a pipeline if need be or whatever, but
do those so you're getting 1,500. Am I doing my math right here? 10 gets you $1,500. So each one is $1,500 payment per month.
yeah, actually, I have the two that I have right now. One's 2,200, one's 1,700. I'm just sort of like rounding down because I like to do that for my personal
Yeah,
numbers in
for
my head.
sure. No,
Yeah,
I'm just thinking $2,200. So how big is that parcel that you sold?
12 acres.
12 acres. Okay. So the
So one,
payment, and how does that 12 acres, 30 years, what is that? $200,000. How much did you sell that thing for?
yeah,
Yeah.
199, I think is what it was.
Yeah. Awesome.
And the one I just closed one technically last Wednesday, and that one was 189. And I think the payments ends up being like 1,750 a month, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, man, that's solid. Straight, yeah, straight P&I to the pocket.
It's one of
So,
those things that when I lost the big money and took the big hit on the brewery side, especially with the brewery though, it's a very creative industry and it sucks a lot of your time and energy. And when I left, I swore I would never do one thing again that defined me. So I have the podcast, I wrote the book, I'm writing another book, I do the real estate, I'm doing the investing. I never want to have one thing that I'm doing as a person. And so that all these little things are fun for me. I just enjoy having more things going on, I guess.
so the book, tell me about the book you wrote
The
and what
book
are
was
you,
actually called How Not to Start a Damn Brewery. It was
yeah,
originally where the podcast came from, was that book was me. It was in 2019. I actually sat down and made a list of all the things we'd done wrong in the brewery to figure out if we could fix it. And my wife said, "Screw you, I'm out of here." And I turned that list into a book, basically. And then after I released the book, I was like, there's a lot of F words in here. There's a lot of anger. This is my story. And there's so many other breweries that have the same stories. So the podcast is me reaching out, letting them sort of do what I got to do with the book. And it's been very educational, but it's also, if you really try to go look, like everyone researches success, but there's just not a lot of people researching failure. And so I think I've created kind of a body of knowledge too of like, wow, what can go wrong? What can you prevent from a real world perspective? And so I'm really proud of how the podcast has turned out and what kind of the plans for the future are with it.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. Let me ask then, is there something looking back or through the conversations that you're having with the other owners of these breweries that stands out as, okay, that works, this doesn't? Like there are some people there, clearly there's got to be some people having success. There are breweries all over San Antonio. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But what is it that makes one successful and one not? I know you have a whole podcast on this, but man, I gotta just
Well, so that will be a lot of what's in the second book. I can tell you the, and I don't want to say it's frustrating, but I would say it's probably the main crux of what I'm trying to talk about is the definition of success. And we could probably spend an entire hour talking about that, but that is ultimately what we deal with in the brewing industry as the biggest problem is that what you perceive as success, butts and seats, cans on the shelf at the grocery store, those things don't necessarily translate to profitability. And I can tell you wholeheartedly that there's not one in San Antonio that's translating to profitability at this particular time. It's not to say they won't, but so
yeah.
anyways, what can you do? The biggest problem you run into across the board, I think, is this facility costs for people.
Mm.
And that is partially due to scale, but at the small scale of what people are interested in from a brewery perspective, unique, interesting, esoteric owners on site, they can't make enough beer to pay the rent for all these crazy commercial landlords, which I'm sure you're not one of them, Randall, so you have to worry about that. But
And
um,
keep my rents
yeah,
low, baby.
we're trying. But that's been the biggest problem. And a lot of breweries I've interviewed that have died recently, that's what happened. It was just rent went up and
Mm.
they weren't profitable before and they sure as hell weren't profitable at three times the rent.
Yeah, got it.
Um,
That's interesting and unfortunate at the same time because there's a lot of them, and it seems like a cool business to be involved in, right?
yeah,
And I don't know, get to make your own beer, do your thing, hang out with your friends. But
there were parts that were fun for sure. I
yeah,
definitely don't look back on it and say that was the whole thing was a disaster. And I did become a better person because of it. I will honestly say that you may not like me now, but I was way cockier and way more arrogant when I'd sold the first company for millions of dollars as a kid.
yeah,
So I needed a kick in the nuts to be a little easier to be around, I guess.
just humble you a little bit.
Yeah.
So how has that translated into like now what you do with the real estate sales? What did you carry forward? Are you just you seem super happy being able to, and maybe I'm wrong, but being able to do less and earn money, like in less in the sense of, okay, look, if I check these boxes, it's going to take me a lot less effort on an ongoing basis to earn the money, and I can spend time with friends, family, whatever. I mean, is that a fair assessment, or is that way off?
Yeah, so one of the problems when you have people who enjoy, and I would estimate that you're probably similar. When you enjoy the chase, you enjoy the close, you enjoy the deal. It's tough to walk away from one like opportunities that are there. That being said, when I started the real estate job, the first couple months sucked. Actually, so I got licensed October 21st, and I did not create any deposits into my checking account until January of the next year. And I put 25 grand in my account that month, and I made over $300,000 the rest of the year. So literally a year after I sold the brewery, I had made more than I had made as far as salary in the brewery the preceding 5 years. And I worked less. I was happier. I didn't miss my daughter's soccer games once. Like I was able to do all the things in life I wanted to do. So that job did create not just more revenue, but it also created a happier lifestyle.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's nice, I will say, to be able to go to all the events and all the things. Like I talked to my wife about it. I'm like, it is lifestyle design. Like if we make less or more or whatever that looks like, then I don't know. You talked about defining success a minute ago. To me, it's like, can we spend time with our family and have all the events that we need to go to, we get to go to. So, well, you said one other thing you were talking about in just before we get off this or wrap it up, but you started writing, okay, and there were a lot of F words, right? You were angry. So how did writing help you either cope with the anger you had or translate into the lessons learned? Because, and I ask this just because there's a lot of podcasts that I listened to lately and a lot of books in general about if you write it out, you clarify your thoughts, you get it on the page and you're able to move on. So in general, has writing assisted you in doing that, and how has that helped you going forward, I guess?
Yeah, there was a lot of frustration with the brewery and just, trying new things. We had all these pivots and catastrophes, trying to fix through them, and it wasn't working. So one big thing that writing allowed me to do is to get everything organized where I had a timeline that I could say, I learned these things, I experienced these things, and now I can put this in a book and I can move on to the next things. And so that gave me a lot of freedom in that sense. It did, editing the story also helps because as you go write everything down and then you go back and edit it, you're like, that's not exactly how that happened, or that's not really what I felt. I wrote that for poetic justice or whatever. And so it kind of helps clarify what had happened as well. And so that you don't have some of those kind of crazy thoughts of like where it went. And it was a fantastic exercise for me. I think it helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I want to start doing. Oh, I really want to start writing some of these stories out, some of the things that have happened, because like I've done it in the past. I don't know. I've done it in the past. It's not a therapy session or anything, but like it definitely helps. It's therapeutic for a reason. And then it also clarifies your thoughts. And like you said, you can put it down and then put it to the side and you're like, okay, that happened. I did that. And then kind of move on.
Yeah, like I didn't want to be as mad as I was. I wanted to be able to share a positive story. And I guess in some ways that's one advantage of the podcast too, and this book and all of it. Now I'm at the point that it was actually a year ago, almost like a year and a half ago, that I took a look at the podcast, I took a look at the message, what was I asking, what was my goal, and I realized that I could either continue to complain all the time about how distributors don't push product and their rents are too high and the cost of goods sold doesn't make any sense with the actual retail price, or I could talk to people about kind of exercising the emotions that they had, and we can look for a reason to do it the right way and the things that make sense, and we can ultimately make the industry better. And that I made a transition, and I'm happy that I did. I think it's made the podcast better. Definitely made me happier. So
that's man. Find the solutions, right? Yeah, it is whatever the status quo is may suck, but then be part of the solution. It's what it sounds like you transition that into. Like, how can you make it work so that people don't have to experience what you experienced?
Yeah,
Solid.
that's kind of the idea. So yeah,
Yeah,
learn from what we did and do better.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Kelly, man, it's been awesome catching up. Just get to know you, hearing what you're doing with the land sales. Definitely want to hit you up and talk to you about some deals, and maybe we're in the same neighborhood. So I don't know if you play pickleball or golf, man, we got to get out and do something. I don't know if you're into, or hunt, maybe you hunt. What do you get into?
I am the least stereotypical land salesperson in the state of Texas, in my opinion. I'll go hunting, but I'm really just going for the whiskey. No, I do have a 4-wheel drive vehicle, but it's not a truck, and it definitely is not a dually. But no, I absolutely would love to hook up and pick your brain as well. And I think there's a lot of opportunity and some synergies that we can come through together. So I'm looking forward to talking to you in the future for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, again, thanks for jumping on. It's good. Good catching up, meeting somebody close to home that I haven't met before. So good luck out there, and close some land, man.
Yeah, thanks. Me too.
Catch you later.
Did you know that 80% of the agents we speak with got into real estate in order to gain passive income so they could obtain financial freedom and become work optional? If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. We'll catch you on the next episode.